Education in South Africa is governed by two national departments, namely the Department of Basic Education, which is responsible for primary and secondary schools, and the Department of Higher Education and Training, which is responsible for tertiary education and vocational training. Prior to 2009, these two departments were represented in a single Department of Education. The DBE department deals with public schools, private schools, early childhood development centers, and special needs schools. The public schools and private schools are collectively known as ordinary schools, and comprise roughly 97% of schools in South Africa. The DHET department deals with further education and training colleges, adult basic education and training centers, and higher education institutions. The 9 provinces in South Africa also have their own education departments that are responsible for implementing the policies of the national department, as well as dealing with local issues. In 2010, the basic education system comprised 12,644,208 learners, 30,586 schools, and 439,394 teachers. In 2009, the higher education and training system comprised 837,779 students in HE institutions, 420,475 students in state-controlled FET institutions, and 297,900 in state-controlled DHET centers. In 2013, the South African government will spend 21% of the national budget on education. Some 10% of the education budget is for higher education. According to the National Census of 2011, among the South African population, 35.2% of Black, African, 32.6% of Coloreds, 61.6% of Indians, Asians and 76% of white citizens have completed an education of high school or higher. 41.7% of the total population has completed an education of high school or higher, whereas 8.6% of the population aged 20 years and older has not completed any schooling. Structure and policies. The Department of Basic Education is headed by the Director General Bobby Subrayan, and its policy is made by the Minister Angie Motshekga and the Deputy Minister Enver Surti. The Department of Higher Education and Training is headed by the Director General Mary Metcalf, and its policy is made by the Minister Blade Namanda and the Deputy Minister Comfort Manyana. Both these departments are funded from central government taxes. The Department of Basic Education pays a portion of teachers' salaries in government schools, whereas independent schools are funded privately. Government schools may, under certain circumstances, supplement their funds through parent contributions. Basic education system. The DBE officially groups grades into 2 bands, called General Education and Training, which includes grade 0 plus grades 1 to 9, and Further Education and Training, which includes grades 10 to 12 as well as non-higher education vocational training facilities. The DHET is subdivided further in 2 phases, called the Foundation Phase, the Intermediate Phase, and the Senior Phase. The administrative structure of most ordinary schools in South Africa do not reflect the division of bands and phases. However, for historical reasons, most schools are either primary schools or secondary schools, also known as high schools. Optional grades. Some home schools and private schools offer the option to complete an additional year after grade 12, sometimes known as grade 13 or post-matric. The South African governmental school system does not have a grade 13, but it forms part of non-South African curriculums that are sometimes followed by private schools in South Africa. The DBE's foundation phase includes a preschool grade known as grade R for reception. Grade R is compulsory, but not all primary schools offer grade R. Grade R may also be attended at a preschool facility. Other grades that can be completed at a preschool center include Grade 00 and Grade 000. Grade R is sometimes called Grade 0, particularly in previously white schools, where the usage was once common. Learner ratios. According to the DBE's 2010 statistics report, on average there are 30 learners per teacher, 480 learners per school, and 16 teachers per school. The ratio of learners per teacher is roughly the same in all provinces, but the ratio of learners per school varies per province. For example, in Gauteng there are 800 learners per school and 28 teachers per school, whereas in the Eastern Cape there are 350 learners per school and 12 teachers per school. School income and expenses. Schools in South Africa receive a grant from government for their operational costs, such as maintaining the grounds, administrative costs, salaries, books and educational materials, and extramural activities. Most schools supplement the government grant with other streams of income, such as school fees paid by parents, fundraising events, and receiving donations. Generally, higher school fees prevent poorer children from attending affluent schools. There is no limit to the amount of the fees that a school may set. Parents may apply to the school for full or partial reduction of school fees, and many affluent schools do provide financial assistance to a small number of learners, but it is not a legal requirement. Children at South African schools are usually required to wear school uniforms, which can be expensive and are not provided for free, although it is often possible to buy them second-hand. Most schools offer extramural activities such as a variety of sports and cultural activities, which requires money to maintain. Many schools maintain their own sports fields as well. The size of the grant paid by government is determined largely by the poverty level of the neighborhood in which the school is situated, as well as unemployment rate and general education rate of the population in that neighborhood. Consequently, schools in more affluent areas have to raise more money from other sources to maintain the same standard of education. But schools from affluent areas often have so much additional income that their standard of education is much higher than that of less affluent schools anyway. The size of the government grant per child depends on the quintilla of the school. In 2009, schools in Quintilla 1 and Quintilla 2 received R807 and R740 per child per year, respectively, whereas schools in Quintilla 4 and Quintilla 5 received R404 and R134 per child per year. Schools in Quintilla 1 to 3 may apply for classification as a no-fee school. 5% of all schools are Quintilla 5 schools, and 15% of all schools are Quintilla 4 schools. Sample school fees. Schools are not required to publish their school fees publicly, and many schools are secretive about it. But here are some examples of school fees in non-private schools in South Africa. The Settlers High, Bellville, R1520 per child per year. Monument Park High, Kraaifontein, R9000 per child per year. Poverty and school fees. Schools may not refuse admission to children who live in the immediate vicinity of the school. Schools may not refuse entry to children or refuse to hand over report cards even if their parents neglect to pay the school fees. But schools are permitted to sue parents for non-payment of school fees. Since 1996, children whose parents are very poor are legally exempt from some or all school fees. Since 1998, the formula is as follows. If the combined annual income of the parents is less than 10 times the annual school fee, the child is legally exempt from paying school fees. If the income is more than 10 times the school fee but less than 30 times the school fee, the child is legally entitled to a specific reduction in school fees. In practice, these regulations help only very poor families, and not working-class and middle-income families. Orphans and children of parents who receive poverty-linked social grants are also exempt from paying school fees. Since 2006, the Education Department offers the following incentive to the poorest 40% of schools. If the school charges no school fees, the Education Department increases the grant to make up for the lack of income from school fees. It was originally planned to increase this incentive to the poorest 60% of schools by 2009. The incentive only applies to children in the DHET band, and children who wish to complete grade 10 to 12 must still pay the full fee. In 2008, some 5 million learners in 14,264 schools benefited from the no-fee school program, and most of those learners were in the Eastern Cape, KwaZulu-Natal and Limpopo provinces. Not all schools who qualify for this incentive make use of it. Private schools, also known as independent schools, are schools that are not owned by the state. They are usually owned and operated by a trust, church or community, or by a for-profit company. Not all private schools in South Africa charge high school fees. Certain private schools also receive a grant from the state, depending on the community served and fees charged. Higher education and training system. For university entrance, a matriculation endorsement is required, although some universities do set their own additional academic requirements. South Africa has a vibrant higher sector, with more than 1 million students enrolled in the country's universities, colleges and universities of technology. All the universities are autonomous, reporting to their own councils rather than government. Restructuring of universities and technikons. The Extension of Universities Act of 1959 made provision for separate universities for separate races. In addition, the independent homelands were given universities of their own. After the reincorporation of the independent homelands, there were 36 universities and technikons in South Africa, often in close proximity and offering the same courses. In 1994, the government embarked on a restructure of the universities and technikons by a series of mergers and incorporations. This was completed by January 2005. It created 22 new institutions from the previous 36. 10 of the universities got new names.